Hello, I'm Alan. Welcome to the Guitar Shack. Today I want to talk to you about one of my favourite subjects, Telecasters. Now, if you don't want to talk about Telecasters, you're just wrong. So this is most of, though not completely all, of my current collection of Telecasters. And for me, the Telecaster has been the constant theme in my transition from bedroom guitarist as a teenager through to doing what I do today. Partly because it's such a fundamentally simple instrument and it's so easy to work on that you can take the time to learn the skills that you need without being in danger of damaging anything. So all of these are built by me. In most cases, they are either all Fender parts or upgrades on Fender parts. So they're not cheap knockoffs by any means, but they are parts casters to a degree. So they're not things that I would sell through the shop. These are for my own enjoyment, and as you know, what started out as a hobby building Telecasters in the style and configuration that I wanted for fun has sort of grown over the years into now operating the Guitar Shack. My starting point for all this was back in the 1980s when I had a Sinclair Spectrum home computer back in the very early days of 1983, something like that, and I sold it and bought a Antoria Stratocaster copy, which turns out nowadays to be quite valuable, but in those days it was cheap. But I made the transition from computer geek to guitar geek, and obviously I made the right life choice there. And I had that guitar for many years, and I did lots of mods to it. And then over the years, I've bought and sold plenty of Squires initially and upgraded the pickups, learned how to do fretwork on them, and then transitioned on to Mexican Fenders being the main body or main types of guitars that I have modded and worked on in the past. So my first Telecaster was actually a brand new US one back in the early 2000s, and it was a gorgeous guitar. It was a two-colour sunburst with a maple neck, US standard at the time. I had that for about 5 years. I really enjoyed it, but I also enjoyed semi-acoustics, and I was looking to upgrade from an Epiphone Dot, and I traded them both in, and a little PRS SE, and I traded them in against a Gibson ES339, which was a lovely, lovely guitar, and I had that for a few years, but then I started to get bored, and so I sold it and bought a number of Mexican Fenders and Epiphones. So I got a Les Paul, a 339, a Strat, and a Tele for what I sold the Gibson for. And the Tele was beautiful. It was a brand new Player Series in Butterscotch Blonde, and I realised then that actually the quality of the Player Series in particular was not a million miles off, and the spec was very similar to my previous US Tele. And then over lockdown, I started with modding the player and then buying other bits, and I moved on to building some of these, and then anyone who was working with me during lockdown in my professional career was seeing an increasing number of Telecasters hanging on the wall behind me in my Teams calls over the course of a couple of years. And here we are today. So these are mine, these are my passion, they're not for sale. And then this one that I'm going to talk about today is also another build. I've got a new neck for it, and I'm going to do a tuner upgrade, so I'll take you through that. So, unusually for me, this build has got an aftermarket body. Generally, I use genuine Fender bodies that I buy secondhand or I obtain by stripping down another Tele. This one is aftermarket, and I imported it from Germany because I just love the colour. This transparent blue with a light bursting around the edge and a really nice figuring in it is a gorgeous hunk of wood. It's all to Fender factory specs, so it's perfect fit, and it's one of my favourite of my built guitars. It looks a little bit in the camera at the moment as if it's got gold hardware, but it doesn't. It's silver. Well, it's nickel. Aftermarket bridge on this one. It's good quality, nickel plated, and it's got staggered saddles, which is one of my is my favourite setup for Telecasters. You get the looks and the feel of the classic 3 saddle bridge, but you get to actually intonate it. The pickups in this one are Tone Rider Hot Vintage, which are really nice, slightly overwound but vintage sounding, and they sound like a Tele should, but they've got some guts. And then, point of today's video is, here is the Player Series neck. Sort of perloid inlays, really lovely. I've given this a fret level, well, yeah, I have actually levelled it in the past. I've just given it a polish and just tidied up the fret ends a little bit before fitting. And as a Player Series, it's got this sort of simplified decal on the front, so it's just Fender Telecaster. It doesn't have a serial number and the made in Mexico, that's all on the back. So it looks a bit more classic. On the back you can see the wood a bit better, and then we've got a standard skunk striped back Player Series neck, and as you can see it's made in Mexico 2021. Now the eagle-eyed amongst you will spot that it also has modern 2-pin tuners and a 10mm diameter tuner holes. So that is generally a bit of a problem if you're going for a more classic look. This double humbucker build is also a Player Series neck, and this is it with the standard Player Series tuners, which are modern and a bit chunky. In the back view, with the standard Player Series tuners, they're blocky on the back, and they've got these quite thick stems up to the more squared off buttons. This one is also 2021. I tend to buy Player Series necks brand new and use those for builds because I just like them. I know what I'm getting, it's good quality, and particularly if it's a build like this, which is a genuine Fender body. Pretty much everything on this guitar is genuine Telecaster. And then compare and contrast that with this very classic looking build. So this is my first parts caster that I built actually. So it is a Fender Classic Series neck, and as you can see it's got the vintage tuners, so it looks correct for what is essentially a replica of a 62 custom. Again, this one is almost all Fender. The only thing that's not Fender in this guitar is the body, which is unsurprisingly a Squier Classic Vibe custom, which are fantastic guitars in their own right, and the body is absolutely beautiful, and I've always loved bound Teles, so that's where I started. And what you can see is the classic style of tuners on here. So stamped backs, a bit smaller, thin stems and the little round buttons, and to me this, along with the 3-saddle bridge, is the classic Tele look, as exemplified by this one, which is another build, also a classic Vibe thin line body, I think, I'm not entirely sure, and not all Fender hardware on this at all. This one is, so it's got a Wilkinson bridge, and then it's got an aftermarket but very nice roasted maple neck, and this does have vintage style tuners, but it came with 10mm holes, so as you can see it's got slightly larger washers in the tuners themselves, but it looks convincingly classic to me. The downside to the vintage style tuners, of course, is that they use a different mounting system. So when you put them on a player, yes, of course, you can put conversion bushings in them, which makes them fit the 10mm holes, the same as this one does, but you've got to drill the holes, which isn't a big drama, let's face it. It's easy enough to do as long as you're careful, and I've done it loads of times. But not everybody wants to do that, and it is a non-reversible mod, because once you've drilled these holes, they're there forever. So these are the standard tuners, as I say, 10mm holes, and these two little pins are both the good point about them because they locate them really well, but also the downside because they are, you can, if you want to use the original mountings, then you are basically going to be using these or the various aftermarket copies you can get. Really, they're not that expensive and they're really good quality tuners, so I tend to stick to the original Fender parts. So, having mercilessly ramped up the very bad drama about how I can possibly solve this terrible problem that I have, the answer is Fender comes to the rescue with these little guys. So this is Fender Classic Gear tuner, and another genuine part, also fitted as standard to, I think, American professional series guitars, but they're available aftermarket, as I say, from most of the normal Fender parts stockists. And as you can see, they have the 2 tuner or the 2 pin location system and the 10mm holes, so they're a perfect drop in. But from the back, they are the size and shape of a vintage tuner, and when they're fitted, they look just like them, and they have the smaller buttons and the narrower necks. And these are brilliant. I love these. I've got these fitted to most of my builds. So fitting these couldn't be easier. They just drop straight in. There's 2 which go on the ends, which have got these sort of diagonal end pieces. And then all you do stick the ferrule in first, drop the tuner in, and then just tighten up finger tight. Simple as that. Don't confuse yourself with the original one. But if you're organised in your workspace better than I am, then that's not going to be a problem for you. The other end. You don't need to put these in too tight. You're basically just nipping them up to hold them in place. The location of the tuner in the wood of the neck itself is what transfers the force of the strings. So you're not actually gaining anything other than crushing the wood by being too tight with them. So just want to make sure that they're tight enough not to rattle. Just a nice snug fit. And there you go. Fairly classic looking Tele now. Now obviously it doesn't look exactly like the original ones because of the size of the ferrules, but I think it's pretty convincing. I just like the look and the good quality. I think they're 18:1 gear ratio, so they hold tune really well and they're very smooth, and I really like them. So Fender, you owe me a royalty for plugging your products. Now, the other point of debate that comes up a lot with vintage tuners is some people find them a bit more difficult to string up. Other people find them the easiest style to string up, and it's one of the oldest arguments on the internet. There's a million videos online of how to do it, but just for completeness, I'll show you here how I do it. My view is these are incredibly simple to string up. They hold their tune really well. They're great if you are working on a guitar and you need to take the neck off and on. You can just pull them out and put them straight back on again. They'll hold tune perfectly. So I think they're the best all-rounders. But they're not for everybody. Certainly you do need to cut them to length when you put them on. So if you're playing live and you want to be able to change strings really fast, just pull it through, tighten up and tune it up, then you're probably better off with locking tuners. But for most purposes, and certainly if you're doing it in a workshop setting like I am, then just I think they're the easiest. Okay, so I have started off by, I've fed all the strings through from the back because frankly my life is too short to video doing that, and so is yours. So all you do with these is dead simple. So you take it, so the D string, you look to go with bass strings. I go to pull it tight to the tuner that I'm aiming for, and then I want 1, 2, and bass strings I basically do 2.5 tuners on from there. So I'm measuring that amount is the extra string that I'm going to need, and I cut, and then what I do is I just pop it straight in the hole, twist it down over the back and round, and then hold it tight there, and that puts, you've located the end of the string right down in the bottom of the tuner. You're holding it down in tension, and then all you're going to do is wind it, and that will do a nice neat wind of just the right amount of string, and because you've held it down at the bottom, it'll feed it up from the bottom, and then that and that's it. That's all you do. So G, so 1, 2, 2.5. You know, I think anywhere between 2 and 3. I tend to leave it a little bit longer. I give it a full 3 on the higher strings, but again, in through the hole, bend it over, down and round, and then hold it tight. Wind it up. I must invest one of those fancy electric string winders that I keep seeing people use on YouTube. Haven't got around to getting one of them yet. Maybe when I become a millionaire influencer as a result of my fantastic YouTube videos. Okay, so that's 1, 2, and then pull it back a little bit. So basically with the upper strings, you can count it the same way, but if you just catch it with your thumb, that's your starting point, and then measure it from any of them. So that's 1, 2, 2.5 is there. Now I'm sure most of you probably know how to do this, and I'm sure there's probably also many people saying that's not how I do it a different way and mine's much better. And I'm sure you're right, because if there's one thing that's sure about the internet is that everybody's got an opinion, and there is no absolute right or wrong answer. But this is how I do vintage tuners, and what I find is that they land well, they come on well, they stay on well, and they stay in tune well if you do it this way. So the last 2, so I'm coming back 1, 2, 3. So let's leave that a little bit longer for the B string, but same principle. The other thing I do is I have the slots pointing towards me, so that when I bend it down and round, I'm not giving it that first tight curve, and then this will wind just the right number of winds on and wind up from the bottom. Just talk amongst yourselves while I wind up a million terms. And then for the E string, 1, 2, 3. So you're basically cutting off the last inch of the string in most cases. I mean, you could just leave it and have the extra winds, but I'm a bit OCD about how many winds I put on sometimes, and this is just how I do it. Each to his or her own. And then lots of winding. Right, strung. So that's it strung up. The next thing I'm going to do is just to give, having had the neck on and off, now that I've got strings on it, I'm just going to loosen the neck screws a little bit. just to let the string tension, sometimes you hear it click, but that'll pull it more tightly into the neck pocket. And I just, it didn't click, I'm not sure if it moved, but we'll put it back in and nip the screws up anyway, and then that makes sure you've got as solid a connection as possible mechanically between the neck and the body. Might be an urban myth, but it seems to work. Can't do any harm anyway. So there we go. Right, so having had the neck off, it's obviously going to need a setup. Yeah, definitely needs a setup, which I'm going to do. So first things first, let's have a wee look at the relief. So just roughly on a tap test basis, I've got some relief, which is what I want, and not a great deal of relief, which is probably also what I want, so I'll just go with that as it is at the moment. And then I'm going to have to raise these saddles. I should check, but I mean, these are probably down at about a mil, yeah they are. So basically, I'm aiming for, I don't go massively low personally, it's all down to personal preference, and in some cases it's not really even about measurement, it's just about how it feels to play. But I tend to go for just under 2 mil on the bass side, down to about 1.5-ish, 1.6-ish on the neck, on the treble side. It really just depends how see, that one's buzzing a little bit. So really, you're just looking to get, I tend to go on the basis that my starting point is rough it in, see where I can get it playing where it's not buzzing. So that's buzzing here. And the real basic rule is, if it's buzzing at the body end, then it's your saddle height. But once that's at a level that's playable, then you lower the action on the rest of it with the truss rod. It seems a little bit counterintuitive because these saddles are here, and you would think that's how you do it. But one should, of course, always tune up to pitch to check these things when I can find my tune up. Good enough. So here we have it, and now I'm sure that my eagle-eyed and knowledgeable viewers will have noted that I didn't put the bottom E string on, and since it's a Telecaster I'm sure you'll know why, but if you don't, then you're about to get your mind blown. So, every Telecaster should be an open G and play a bit of Keith every now and then. In reality, this is a three saddle bridge. The downside, although they sound great, and I love an open G Tele, the downside is it's actually quite difficult to get the intonation right because the string is kind of pulled out of alignment. It's not balanced by the bottom E. So this one may end up going back to standard tuning, but I have a little bit of Keith for now. So there you have it, another episode of Pimp My Fender. I really like these player necks. I like these block inlay ones. You can still find them online. I think they're really cool. I love these Classic Gear tuners. I recommend them as an upgrade if you want something a little bit more classic on your player series, or any modern Fender Strat or Tele that's got the twin pin buttons. I don't think they work on the Squires though, but you might want to check that if you're looking to add them onto a Squire. Brilliant tuners, and I think with the split posts, again, I love them. Some people hate them. If you hate them, then you're making the wrong choices in life. That's as simple as that. But with the split post tuners and with the three saddle bridge, then I think it's got a nice combination of vintage looks and modern playability with the jumbo frets on the player necks. As I say, this one's got Tone Rider pickups, vintage plus I think they are. I hope you like them. It's also got a four-way switch, which gives you a nice beefy neck tone. So this is why I like Telecasters. It's a plank, it's a bit of wood, it's screwed together. You can mod it, you can do what you like with it, and you can get what is a really nice guitar out of it for not a huge amount of money. So thanks very much. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please like and subscribe, and have a look at my website, alanguitarshack.com. Hints, tips and guitars for sale over there, plus the services that I do. I can do any of this stuff to your guitar, and I look forward to seeing you back here at the Guitar Shack soon.